And you think you're doing something reasonable or even intelligent or maybe even clever, only to find out that you did something stupid. Now let me ask you a question. How many of you have done something in, let's say, the last year that you thought was actually a pretty good idea, and it turned out when you look back at it that it was actually incredibly foolish? How many of you have done that in the last year? Really? Only half of you? And the other half of you are doing something foolish right now by not putting up your hand.
Welcome to Church of the Rock from Winnipeg. Stay tuned to this week's thought-provoking message from Pastor Mark Hughes.
This morning my message is entitled Wisdom, Madness, and Folly. And it's a little scripture we're going to look at in just in a moment. But I want you to think about life for a moment. Everything in life kind of falls in one of those three categories. It's either wise, it's either foolish, or it's way out in the fringe of madness and insanity. And we pretty much move within those three categories as well. I'm going to start this morning with an ancient proverb, not sure where exactly it came from, and I want you to listen really carefully or you're going to miss it. And as I'm going through it, I want you to decide where you fit in it. And it goes like this. He who knows not and knows not that he knows not is a fool. Shun him. He who knows not and knows that he knows not is simple. Teach him. He who knows and knows not that he knows is asleep. Wake him. And he who knows and knows that he knows is a wise man. Follow him. And then there's, of course, no one knows noses like Kleenex knows noses. But that's actually not part of it. But I want to tell my own story in way of framing this. I'm going to tell a little story here you can probably all relate to of a time where I thought I was being quite clever and I was actually being quite foolish. And it's an Ikea story. Anybody love Ikea? Any in the room? Any Ikea people? You love Ikea? Do you? Yeah, I hate it. Actually, I don't hate Ikea. I'm afraid of it. And I'm fearful of Ikea because of the maze. You know, the labyrinth thing? They don't have aisles, right? They have the maze. You've all been in it. You go in the maze. And I'm always worried that I'm not going to get out. And I'm convinced there are people that have been lost in there since it opened 2.5 years ago. You could live there. You could, right? They got bathrooms. They got kitchens. They got beds. They got pillows. There's food in the cafeteria. You could live there for several years, and who would even notice? But anyway, so I don't go. But Kathy goes, and every once in a while she brings home furniture. Well, the other day she brought home all of this. Well, she called it furniture. She said, I went to Ikea, I bought this furniture, and I opened it up, and there wasn't furniture in it. There was lumber in it. She bought boxes and boxes and boxes of lumber. And then there's bags of screws and bolts and washers and stuff. She says, could you just sort of put that furniture together? I said, what furniture? You bought lumber, for goodness sakes. And so anyway, I said, yeah, I'll put this together. And of course, it has this little tool to put it together. The little proprietary tool, right? That doesn't exist anywhere else on the planet. You will not have one in your toolbox, and you have a 90% chance of breaking that before you finish the project. That's how it works. And so I'm kind of a little panicky about this. And she says, here's the instructions. So I look at the instructions. One problem, I don't actually read Swedish. I don't know about you, but you know, written in Swedish. So what they do is they have pictures. Know the pictures? Now, apparently, they're done by, Swedish school children. Draw these pictures for you to follow. So she hands me the instructions, said, just follow instructions. I said, I'm not an idiot. I don't need the instructions. I know how to put together furniture. And so I put together all this furniture, massive amounts of furniture. I get it all made. I flip it upside right. Kathy comes by and says, why are all the bolts sticking from the inside out? And I said, I'm not sure. Let me check the instructions, which I finally did. And I looked at the picture. I put every single bolt, every single one in backwards. I had to take it all apart and put it all back together again. What got into me? Why did I think that I was smarter than the same people who invented the Volvo and the Swedish meatball? What was I thinking? What was I thinking? And so that's my Ikea story. How many have an Ikea story? Yeah, we all have an Ikea story. But I think if you don't have an Ikea story, I'll tell you what you have. You have a story of some time when you thought you did something smart and you actually did something stupid. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're in Ecclesiastes chapter 2. We're going to start at verse 12, and this is what it says. It says, "Then I turned myself to consider witness. Let me say it again. Then I turned myself to consider wisdom and madness and folly. Then I saw that wisdom excels folly as light excels darkness." This was King Solomon, the wisest man that ever lived, the Bible tells us. And he says, this is what I've done. I've considered wisdom, madness, and folly, and I've decided that wisdom is better than folly. Well, thank you for clearing that up for us, because we wouldn't have got that on our own. Now, I know you look at that and you say, you know, that's really obscure. Well, you know, it does seem really obscure until you begin to think about it and you realize that the reason he has to say that is a lot of times we get confused between wisdom, madness, and folly. And a lot of times the things that we think are brilliant in this world are actually not brilliant at all. How many of you have heard this expression that there's a fine line between genius and insanity, right? And I'm going to call it genius and madness, because in our world, let me put it this way, I think our world's gone mad. I think our world has gone mad. I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I look through history. I think our world's gone mad. Some of the most captivating people of history were absolutely complete nut jobs. There's just no other way to describe these people. They were crazy. They were mad. They were insane. The word madness means a reckless state of mind. And we look at some of the most compelling and captivating leaders of history, and they managed to convince huge swaths of people to follow them, and they were murderous, despotical tyrants. I think of Joseph Stalin, who killed 70 million of his own people. We have Hitler that killed 18 million of his own people, not including the 30 or 40 million that lost their lives in his war. And then we had Pol Pot in Cambodia in the 1970s, who killed 1.5 million of his own people. And then you had Mussolini, and then you had Slobodan Milosevic in Yugoslavia, and you have Nicolae Ceausescu in Romania, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And you begin to think of these people, you say, how did a man like Hitler captivate an entire nation of German people? Germans typically are actually very conservative thinkers. How did he convince them to go along with his plan of world domination and genocide and ethnic cleansing? Oh, I got a plan. Let's all kill our neighbors if they're not of the same religion and race. I mean, how did he convince them of doing that? You see, madness has a very compelling quality to it. And I know we think of Hitler and we go, you know what? I'm glad those days are gone. Never again. Really? Never, have you read a newspaper recently? Have you turned on the news recently? The world is still as mad a place as it ever. Just look at what's going on in the Middle East. People killing themselves in the name of religion. You do know there's a great incongruency in that, don't you? To kill in the name of religion or in the name of God or in the name of Allah or whatever. That when you see a man, a suicide bomber, going into a mosque and blowing himself up and killing 137,000 people, or 137 people rather, who were praying to his same God, there's something wrong with this. Our world has gone completely mad. And then people say, well, okay, maybe in other parts of the world, but certainly not in North America. We have nothing weird or bizarre or mad going on in North America. Well, let me give you just a little example here. Did you know what the penalty is for destroying a bald eagle egg? It's 1 year in jail and a $5,000 fine. Yet, we gave Dr. Henry Morgentaler the Order of Canada for destroying unborn human beings. There's something wrong with this picture. I hope you agree with that. Maybe the things we're doing in this world are not as sane as we think they are. We have legislators all the time producing laws and putting them on the books that are absolutely nuts. Let me give you a few examples. In the state of Washington, it is illegal if you encounter a Sasquatch to harass it. But they have no law what to do if you encounter a vampire or a zombie. What's that all about? In Alabama, it's against the law to drive your car blindfolded. Now, I know somebody's saying, well, that's actually pretty reasonable. Yeah, it's reasonable not to do that. It's unreasonable that you have to have a law telling people not to do that. Oh, I'm sorry, officer. I didn't know it was against the law to drive blindfolded. My favorite one is in Waynesboro, Virginia, where it is illegal for a woman to drive her car down Main Street without her husband walking in front of the car waving a red flag. Clear away, here she comes. Now I suspect that might be an old law, but it's still on the books. How about this one? In Idaho, it's illegal to give your fiance a box of candy that weighs more than 50 pounds. I'm wondering if that was the original pot of gold chocolates that was a real pot. Here you go, honey. Hope you like them. You know, there's so much madness in our world, we don't even recognize it. We have legislatures all over the place doing things that we never hear about, never think about, and maybe they have some good reasoning in their mind, but this line between genius and madness is so fine, and we live in a world, I think, for the most part, has gone mad. So let's talk about the second one of these, because he says wisdom, madness, and folly. Folly is just another word for foolishness. And foolishness, unfortunately, is something every one of us fall into eventually, right? He who knows not and knows not that he knows not is a fool. And the problem with not knowing and not knowing that you don't know is you don't know that you don't know, right? Right? And you think you're doing something reasonable or even intelligent or maybe even clever, only to find out that you did something stupid. Now let me ask you a question. How many of you have done something in, let's say, the last year that you thought was actually a pretty good idea, and it turned out when you look back at it that was actually incredibly foolish? How many of you have done that in the last year? Really? Only half of you? And the other half of you are doing something foolish right now by not putting up your hand. You know what? It's only 11 o'clock in the morning and some of you have already done something foolish that you thought was smart, right? We all do these things every single day. We make mistakes. And you know, we a lot of times think that foolish people are young people, right? There's an expression, well, he's just young and foolish. He's just young and foolish, you know. Actually, there's a good reason why young people do a lot stupider things than older people. And that's a proven fact, by the way. And there's a reason, I'll give you the medical reason for it. It has to do with the development of their brains. Do you know that in the adolescent brain, the amygdala, which is the impulse center, where your emotions and your desires and your passions for sensations, that develops faster than their prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex, right behind your forehead, is the executive decision-making part of your brain. That is where you look at ideas and you analyze them, and it's developed slower than the impulse center. So their risk assessment is not as well developed as yours is. And that's why young people do so many dangerous things. And that's why they engage in dangerous sex and dangerous drugs and dangerous activities, because things aren't all clicking in there. That's what's going on, right? And, you know, let me tell you a story about this. And it's going to embarrass someone in the room, and it won't be me. And it's a story about my son who's sitting over there, and I won't point at him. And about 7 or 8 years ago, we were skiing together. He was about around 19, 20 years old. We were skiing together. We were at Sunshine Village, and we're going up the chairlift, and there was this cliff we could see on this run, and he points at it, and he says, "Hey, Pop, I think I'll go jump off that cliff." And so as a father, responsible father, I said, "Okay." And you know, he's an accomplished skier. I'm not really worried about this. And I said, "This is what we'll do. We'll head down there, and I'll spot the landing for you, and make sure you go off and land in the right place, and when it's all clear, I'll let you go." So we skied down to where the cliff was, and I stood on the edge of the cliff, and I yelled up at him because he needed a bit of a runway, right? So he was a little further up, couldn't see the landing, couldn't see where he was going. I said, "This is what you need to do." I said, "You need to hit the left side of this lip, and you're all clear landing, and you're all good." I said, "Don't go off the right side. Because if you go off the right side, there's a clump of trees down there, and if you fall, you're going to end up in the trees. So go off the left side." So he yells back at me, "So go off the left side?" I said, "Correct," rather than right. I said, "Correct." So I push back, I wait for him to come. He goes off exactly where I told him not to go. Exactly where I told him not to go. I'm standing there, I'm completely incredulous as he leaps off this edge, goes off, lands, turns immediately, misses the tree, and comes to a stop. So I ski down there. I'm a dad. I'm mad. And I go down there. I said, what were you thinking? I told you not to go off the right side of the lip because if you fell, you're going to land in the trees. He looked me right in the face and said, but I didn't fall now, did I? and you know, I'm thinking as a parent, I'm thinking, what's going on in this brain of his? And you all have been there. You look at your teenager and you say, what's going on in there? I'll tell you what's going on in there. Nothing. They're brain damaged. There's nothing going on. They're not assessing the risk. They're not thinking this through. We shouldn't even be asking that question. We should be surprised when they do something that's not stupid. That's what we should be doing. There's this, I'm not trying to insult the young people. I'm just making an observation. Here's what happens. When we are younger, our brains are not as well developed, and we do dangerous things, and we are, by definition, we are young and foolish. Here's the problem. Now I'm going to talk about the rest of you, is that we grow up and remain old and foolish. And if we stay in that old and foolish, then that's problematic. I think probably in the interest of fairness and self-disclosure, I probably need to show you one more little clip here. It's actually not a video. It's a sequence of photos of a 57-year-old pastor that you might know leaping off a snow fence at Lake Louise just last month. Here it is real quick. I know some of you are looking at that and say, okay, Pastor Mark, what's the difference? I'll tell you the difference. Number one, I have a helmet on. Number two, I'm doing it on snow. Number three, I landed on my feet. And number four, probably most importantly, I've got my own theme song going, right? if you got a theme song, I mean, it just makes everything so much better. And so, you know, here's the challenge to every one of us, is that I think we all fall into that trap of either being young and foolish, old or foolish, and somewhere in between foolish. And we have to grow out of our foolishness. And one of the big steps to figuring out that is beginning to admit that you are a fool or have been foolish. He who knows not that he knows not is a fool. But he who knows not and knows that he knows not is simple. Teach him. And the first step to getting out of the foolish things that we do in life is beginning to admit that maybe some of the things we do are foolish. And every one of us, I think we need to look at our own lives, examine our own lives, because the Bible has as much to say about foolishness as it does about wisdom. This is why King Solomon was talking about these things. This is why he said, I considered wisdom, madness, and folly, which is just another word for foolishness. He says we need to look at our lives, we need to analyze our lives and realize how foolishness is, and come to that place where we admit that maybe we have needs. So this is what I'm going to do. I thought, you know what would probably be really helpful is to give you all a quiz today, to give you a little test. You probably didn't know you were going to get a test today, but you are. And this is a crash course in foolishness. Some of you say, I don't need a crash course. I'm good. Yeah, I know. But I'm going to give you a little crash course here, and it's a bit of a test, and we're going to go through, and they're all biblical, every single one of these things. And we're going to go through this, and I want you to examine your own life and say, which one of those is me? Which one of those represents me? And if you fail one or two of these, then you're an entry-level fool, pretty much like the rest of us. If you fail 3 or 4 of these, then you are probably a certified fool, and we have a certificate for you at the end of the service. If you fail all 7 of these, then you're probably a complete moron, and I doubt I can really help you. That was mean, but I think as you go through this, you'll probably see that this is true. So let's throw this up. This is you know you're a fool when. All right, number 1, you never shut up. Proverbs 18:2, a fool has no delight in understanding, but in expressing his own heart. You know what the fool does? The fool is that person that just never shuts up. They just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. They don't care what anybody else thinks, and they don't care about anybody else's opinion, and they just do all the time. Here's the problem if you never shut up. You're actually not ever learning anything, because the only thing you ever heard, you're saying, and you already knew it, right? And so if you're one of those people that just has trouble shutting up, shut up, all right? So that's number 1, is you know you're a fool when you never shut up. Number 2 is you know you're a fool when you always think you are right. Proverbs 12:15, the way of the fool is right in his own eyes, but he who heeds counsel is wise. So the fool always thinks he's right, but here's a little thing. If you're really intuitive here, you're probably going to pick up that most of these proverbs actually tell you how to be wise. It describes the fool, but then it gives you the advice as to how to be wise. Now, the fool always thinks he's right, but what does the wise man do? Did you catch it? Takes the counsel of others. Yeah? Right, you don't know. Might be right, might be wrong. That's why I take counsel of others. Okay, so you know you are a fool. Number 3, when you don't take correction when you are wrong, which you usually are, right? Proverbs 15:5. A fool despises his father's instruction, but he who receives correction is prudent. So you see, the fool doesn't take correction. The wise man, it tells you what the wise man do. Are you following this? You catching this? It's the corollary here. The wise man is someone who takes correction. All right, number 4. You know you are a fool when you have no control over your emotions. Proverbs 29:11. A fool vents all his feelings, but a wise man holds them back. If you're one of those people that every time those emotions rise up in any given situation, you feel it's your duty and responsibility to go blah all over everybody else, then the Bible describes you as a fool. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. A wise man knows when and how to hold back their emotions. Number 5, you know you are a fool when you are overly confident. Proverbs 14:16, a wise man fears and departs from evil, but a fool rages and is self-confident. Number 6, you know you are a fool when you repeat the same mistakes over and over. Again, I love this proverb. Proverbs 26:11, as a dog returns to his own vomit, so a fool repeats his folly. That's true, isn't it? You find really foolish people, and they just repeat the same mistake over and over and over again and don't seem to learn from consequences. All right, next one. You know you are a fool when, number 7, people tend to want to punch you in the face. I'm not making this stuff up. These are Bible truths, people. Number 7, people tend to want to punch you in the face. Proverbs 18:6, a fool's lips enter into contention and his mouth calls for blows. If you're one of those people, you're always mouthing off and people want to punch you in the face, that's a good marker that maybe, just maybe, take it as a sign. Take it as a sign that you might be falling. Now I'm going to give you a bonus question because some of you aren't doing very well. And so I'm going to give you a bonus question. Number 8, you know you're a fool when you deny the existence of God. Psalm 14:1, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. The Bible describes a fool as someone who says in their heart, there is no God. Let me tell you something. Denying the existence of God is the absolute height of human arrogance. It does not get any worse than that. When we are in this place where we think that we can exist, or anything can exist for that matter, without God, that is the ultimate foolishness. There is nothing more foolishness than that. You know, it's interesting to me because as you look at some of the sort of clever and brilliant and scholastic and academic people, a lot of them fall into that category. A lot of people in our world are actually very intelligent, but actually have come to that place where they have denied God as their Lord and as their Creator. And the Bible describes those people as fools. Not my word, it's the Scripture's word. And you can begin to think about people, even brilliant minds. Have you ever noticed this, that the atheists, the avowed atheists, end up talking about God more than anybody else? I know atheists, and they're always talking to me about God. And I said, man, for a guy who doesn't believe in God, you sure talk a lot about him. And they've got this axe to grind. You know who one of the people I think of, not a personal friend of mine, but it's Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking, who wrote the books, you know, The Brief History of Time, and these different books, this brilliant, or supposedly one of the greatest minds of our time, right? This astrophysicist. And when you begin to look in his stuff, you realize that he has a real issue with the existence of God. Let me tell you what he wrote in his book. His last book is called A Grand Design. And this is what he wrote. He said, because there is such a law as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. Spontaneous creation is the reason there is something instead of nothing. The reason the universe exists, the reason we exist. It is therefore not necessary to invoke God to light the blue touch paper to get the universe going. Now I want you to think about that statement for a moment. He says that because we have gravity, the universe can create itself out of nothing, and that's why there's something instead of nothing. The statement is contradictory, first of all, because he says that something came out of nothing because of gravity. Well, if you have gravity, then you don't have nothing, right? And so he's contradictory to begin with. And then I would take it a little further. I'd say, well, Mr. Hawking, I have a question for you. Who created gravity? If gravity is what created the universe, which I struggle with a little bit, God, gravity, I don't know, waffling on that one. When we look at those two things, I mean, how can you even, I think they can even compare? And so if there's gravity that produced all this, maybe there's some scientific, evidence to that effect. Who created gravity? I think that's a logical question, right? Let me tell you a story that a woman that comes to the Saturday night told me last night. She holds a PhD, very, very skilled person. She's a pathologist, one of our hospitals in the Winnipeg here. And she was at this dinner party, and she was in this conversation about evolution. And in this conversation, she made some hint towards creationism. And this person she was talking to, she'd never met this person before, said, "You're one of those Bible-believing Christians, aren't you?" And she says, "Well, as a matter of fact, I am." And he looked her right in the eye and said, "Then you're an idiot." And he turned and walked away. And she stood there. She says, "I was absolutely dumbfounded. I had someone point at my face and call me an idiot and walk away. I didn't know what to do." I said, "I'll tell you what you should have done. You should have tapped him on his shoulder and asked him, what university did you earn your PhD at?" That's what I would have asked him. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. So we've looked at madness, we've looked at folly, and I want to take just a moment and talk about wisdom, which is really where we're going next time. But let me take just a moment to talk about wisdom. We're going to just look at a quick passage here in closing and set us up for the next time. And it's in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 3. It says, "When I was my father's son, tender and the only one in the sight of my mother, he also taught me and said to me, let your heart retain my words, keep my commandments and live. Get wisdom." Say, get wisdom. "Get understanding. Do not forget nor turn away from the words of my mouth. Do not forsake her, and she will preserve you. Love her, and she will keep you. Wisdom is the principal thing." Say, wisdom is the principal thing. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. Say, get wisdom. "And in all you're getting, get understanding." Twice he says, get wisdom. Twice he says, get understanding. And he said that wisdom was the principal thing. The principal thing, the first and the most important thing is wisdom. Wisdom. Now, there's a big difference between knowledge and wisdom. See, knowledge is knowing what? Wisdom is knowing what to do, right? And you can get knowledge anywhere. You can get knowledge in school. You can get knowledge from books. You can go to the internet and get all kinds of knowledge. And you can fill your head with all kinds of information because that's what knowledge is. And you can still be as dumb as a post because you don't have wisdom. And wisdom is what you do with the knowledge. And so King Solomon, who also wrote this proverb we're reading, he said the most principal thing in life is wisdom. And he says, in all you're getting, get wisdom, get understanding, seek it, pursue it. You need to find it. If you're going to succeed in life, you're going to need wisdom to add to your knowledge. And if you go into the New Testament, it tells us that the wisdom of this world, or the knowledge of this world, is earthly and it's sensual and it's demonic. But he says the wisdom that comes from above is different. And you see, what the Scripture reminds us is that the foolishness of God is greater than the wisdom of man. And the very, very basic things of Christianity and God are more brilliant than all the things the world can come up with. And so if we are going to become people of wisdom, what the Bible teaches us is that we need to become people of the Word of God. The Word of God is the greatest compendium of wisdom that the human race has ever known. And if we become people of the Word, we will become people of wisdom, and we can pursue it. Obviously, it's not something we were born with, unfortunately. It's something we need to pursue. It's something we need to chase after. King Solomon said what? "I have considered wisdom, madness, and folly, and I have come to the conclusion that wisdom is better than folly." And so why don't we join together, join our hearts together, and pursue God, pursue His Word, and in doing so, we will get wisdom and get understanding.
Church of the Rock has services every Sunday at 1397 Buffalo Place, and we invite you to join us when you're in the Winnipeg area. If you'd like a booklet to help you understand more about God's gift of forgiveness and reconciliation through Jesus Christ, please contact us, and we'd be happy to send you a free copy of the Book of Hope. Visit our website at www.churchoftherock.ca. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.